Welcome to my channel, everyone. It's Anthony TDG, or Anthony the Dubstep Gamer, and I am here with the Chiori kit explanation video. So after a while since the time I announced that I was going to be making this video, it's time to make it. So in this video, I will be basically explaining Chiori and what she does. So with that information, we could actually gauge to see how good she'll be. So of course, let's get right into it. So for a brief explanation of her kit as a whole, she is a Geo sub DPS that wields a sword, and she does have chances to infuse her attacks with Geo. The other big thing about her kit is that she works with other Geo characters and buffs based off crystallized and constructs. So yeah, with the overview out of the way, let's get into the details. Starting with the elemental skill. The elemental skill casts AoE Geo damage and then summons a puppet on the field that deals damage over time. Now the funny thing is, if you do hold her elemental skill, she'll basically be like Alhaitham or Kacheng, where you can just hold it, you aim in a spot, and then you just go to that direction, and then you can just plunge down or anything. So it's another one of those abilities. So if you've seen people refer to her as Geo Alhaitham or Geo Kacheng, that's why. But anyways, yeah, it does buff based off constructs. So if you have no constructs, it will just summon one puppet that hits 5 times over the course of 17 seconds. Now if you have one construct, it will summon 2 puppets and will do 10 hits in about 10 seconds. Another thing to note about Chiori is she does have split scaling between attack and defense. So she's in that bridge between like the other mono Geo characters that scale off defense, but also the attack scaling ones like Nigwang and Navia. So what that means is that she could benefit from like Bennett and Goro, but we'll get into that in the team section. Here's where we get into the very weird part about her elemental skill, which is that if you press it again after you cast the puppet, it will automatically switch to the next character, which I find pretty weird, but I mean, you can kind of circumvent that if you place your characters a little differently. So like if you want to switch to like a hyper carry or something, you're going to have to place them after Chiori and not before. But the other thing is, during this state, if any character does a normal charge or plunge attack, the puppets will do a coordinated attack, doing AoE Geo damage that's equal to basically the attack from Feathered Sleeve Touch that is part of her kit, and this is considered elemental skill damage. So not only does she have the puppets that keep attacking and doing skill damage, but if the characters do damage, those puppets will attack again, doing even more skill damage. However, these coordinated attacks only happen once every 2 seconds, and only a max of 2 coordinated attacks can be triggered, which this is unclear because we don't know if that means only one character can trigger 2 coordinated attacks and that's it, the skill part is over, or that means they can only do it twice per character in your team, so like each character can trigger it twice. That's unclear. I tried to find something about that and I couldn't. I'm gonna be optimistic and assume the whole team can trigger it twice, because that would be kind of dog shit if it was only one character. Looking at Chiori's damage in a comparison to a very similar character, Albedo, the reason why I'm going to compare Albedo and Chiori is because Albedo's the only other Geo sub DPS that we can compare this to, and from a damage perspective, she does do significantly more damage than him. In an average rotation, she could do like around 300,000 damage, and Albedo can do a little bit over 200,000. And also, when Chiori's information first came out, it seemed like she was able to snapshot defense buffs, but it seems she can't now. It's unclear about attack, but I'm gonna assume she can't snapshot either one of them. Now here's the thing about Chiori's damage as well. She does do significantly more damage than Albedo if you're in a team with constructs, but if you have no constructs on the team, she barely does more damage than Albedo. So you're gonna want to play her more in mono Geo than rather a Navia team. As I said earlier, I am gonna go over why Chiori won't be really good for Navia, unless you got constellations of course, but I'm not going over that. But yes, anyways, there is a very good thing about the puppet. It cannot be destroyed, unlike Albedo's construct, so take that, Albedo. Now I'm going to assume it just can't be destroyed in general, because yeah, maybe it does have an HP pool, but it can still be destroyed with like a boss walking over it or some shit. And assuming that does happen, then well, she really isn't that much different from Albedo. But assuming that a boss walking over the puppet doesn't destroy it, then there you go, she's better. Now as I said earlier, during that whole state where if you press the skill again after the puppet is summoned, not only do you trigger another puppet attack if a character does a coordinated attack, but if Chiori does a normal attack, she'll get Geo Infusion for 5 seconds. It's unclear about her normal attack scalings, but they're probably going to be average scaling with attack scaling, which is not the most ideal because you're going to want to build her with defense, so you're not really going to get the most out of her normal attacks. But hey, if you have some gaps in your rotation that you need to fill, get some crystallizes, or just do a little bit of damage, there you go. Another thing about her normal attacks, I can't show it obviously, but she does wield 2 swords, so she's not really going to beat the Geo Alhaitham allegations. I mean, come on, she's got the skill and now she's got the 2 swords. Now on to the simplest part of her kit, thank god, is her elemental burst. It's basically just a nuke. It has okay scaling, but the damage it provides kind of makes it a DPS loss overall for the team trying to use it, so don't try to build full energy recharge just to get this every rotation. I think it's just better if you do it every other rotation, or if you just have no energy on anyone and you have it on her, there you go. Now with the very common complex kit explanation out of the way, now let's go over her build. Starting for Chiori's best weapons, she really doesn't have many options. So we do have her signature, which it gives 542 base attack, which is pretty low, but gives an 88% crit damage substat. But the other part about it is that it provides 48% skill damage and 20% defense. So it basically caters to all of her kit with no downsides, as you're gonna see in the next weapons. The other two options you really have for her are not much. So one that might seem very obvious to all of you is Cinnabar Spindle, which is Albedo's weapon. Obviously that's kind of bad because, well, you have Albedo and you're probably gonna have to steal it from him. But the other part is, yes, it does provide a lot of defense and provides a lot of skill damage based off the defense. The problem is the cooldown. It does it once every 1.5 seconds, and the problem is she attacks with her skill very often, because if you have constructs in the team, she'll summon 2 puppets and they'll do attacks all the time. Also, they'll do more coordinated attacks if your characters do charge, normal, and plunge attacks. So basically only one of your puppets hits will actually be really buffed by this, but I mean, it's going to be the generic best one. The other weapon, which has a slight edge over it, is the Harbinger of Dawn. It gives crit damage and has a low base attack, but gives more crit rate if you're above 90% HP. And obviously this kind of locks her out of Farina teams, but also you don't want to on-field her too much for this either, because if she gets hit once, bam, passive of this weapon is over. So Harbinger of Dawn is mainly just an option if you want to use mono geo teams, like a team where you'd be shielded all the time. And Cinnabar Spindle is kind of better if you're going to use a team that only has 1 puppet and you're not doing elemental skill hits all the time. So literally it's just pick whichever weapon you'd rather use. Of course, you can always fall back to a defense substat 3-star weapon, but yeah, not great. Moving on to the artifacts. So starting with artifact sets, you have 2 options. You have the Husk and the Golden Troop set. They're both pretty much equal in terms of utility. However, Husk is ever so slightly better, and the gap is widened a little bit more when you're in a mono geo team, especially because Husk buffs all of her kit and Golden Troop only buffs her skill, and the gap is so big that you might as well just put Husk on her. However, it can just go up to whichever one has the better substats. As for artifact stats, that's more straightforward. So you want to go for a geo damage goblet. As for the sands, you could go attack or defense, but most of the time it's going to be preferred to go for defense, as she has higher scalings with defense, so you'll get more damage out of that. And for crit rate or crit damage circlet, depending on which weapon you're going to be running, some substats you want to look out for are energy recharge, attack, defense, or crit. Now that we've gone over the build, we might as well go over her best teams now that we can finally get to it. So one of her obvious best teams, which is the one you're going to be using her most in, is a mono geo team with Ito, Goro, Zhongli. She mainly replaces Albedo in all of the teams that you're going to use her in, so it's just the damage increase in that team, and it will do alright. Just got to be careful with the placement, because she will switch to another character if you're not careful. As for the other team that you would be putting her, which is a Navia team, it's not exactly the best unless you have C1, which literally says, alright, now you can use her with Navia. She'll be fine, she just can't use 2 puppets because you don't have a construct in that team. But she is a noticeable upgrade over Albedo in the Navia teams, and she's just a pretty okay flex option for that team. Of course, it's probably still preferred for you to use the double pyro with Zhongli in the Navia team, but it's an option. Overall, in terms of meta evaluation, I think she's okay. She's not exactly as amazing as I was hoping, and she power creeps a character who wasn't really that great to begin with, so it's I'll still be pulling for her, not only because she looks fine, but just, I don't know, I kind of like Geo playstyle, and I would like an upgrade in my Ito teams. I'll stay tuned for beta updates, but for now, this is what we have. And if you guys like this video, please leave a like and subscribe, as I very much so appreciate it. And as always, take care and have a great day.